United Firefighters Union of Australia has written to the Prime Minister saying a federal royal commission would be redundant. Joining me live now to discuss this is Peter Marshall, the National Secretary of the organisation. Thanks for your time this afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon.
Peter, a lot of Australians are saying a royal commission is absolutely vital on a federal level, but you're saying it's unnecessary. Why is that?
Well, we're not the only ones saying it's unnecessary. You've seen the employer body who represents fire services yesterday say the same thing. So can I say the letter that we sent to the Prime Minister was constructive in the sense that a royal commission is by law a commission of inquiry. Any findings from a royal commission are not binding. They will not be binding on a state or territory government or any other person. That's against a backdrop where there has been literally dozens, if not more, inquiries in relation to fires. There's been recommendation after recommendation. There will be nothing that is new in relation to the subject matters that comes out of these fires that has not already been traversed. And can I go through some of those?
Yeah.
Deployment of ADF personnel. Well, that's happened on at least 2 occasions before, and there's numerous recommendations in relation to that from inquiries. The interoperability of fire services across the country. There's numerous recommendations regarding how that can be better achieved. In relation to the utilisation of aircraft, again, there's inquiries that have been documented in relation to how that can be better achieved. But again, what we're actually asking for is we're not just saying no, we're saying, look, a better process would be for COAG, that's for all the state and territory governments, to come together to review these recommendations. They've been born out of extensive inquiries, subject to expert evidence, cross-examination. The recommendations are not just from a person, they've been born out of inquiries against the backdrop of disaster. At the very least, we should be doing a stock take to see whether what is the status.
So why is it exactly, if we've had so many inquiries in the past, as you say, I think it was about a dozen or more, what is usually the reason why these state governments or the federal government aren't actually putting them into play? Is it a cost thing or is it red tape? What is the main reason? Why aren't they listening to these recommendations?
See, fortunately, we have the corporate knowledge because we've been around a long time. I've been in the fire service for 30 years. Governments come and go. Like other fires, this fire, the timing will eventually be out of the media spotlight. And indeed, some of those recommendations that I've spoken about in the past, they actually get forgotten about. So that doesn't mean that they're not warranted or valid. So a better process would be to actually collate all those recommendations, get all the governments together under the official body, that be COAG, do a stock take and come up with an implementation plan. The issue is this also, is that if you have a federal royal commission that cannot compel a state or territory to accept any recommendation, at the same time you've already had 2 states, being New South Wales and Victoria, saying we're having our own inquiry. Again, there's another layer that is in relation to the fatalities that have occurred. There's coronial inquest. It becomes unworkable. If there's conflicting recommendations out of those inquiries, given the fact that there's been extensive evidence and recommendations from Royal Commissions and Senate inquiries that haven't been implemented, it sort of makes the whole process of a federal Royal Commission ill-conceived, and we say that constructively.
So I guess that is the point, isn't it, that you're not saying don't hold a Royal Commission, you're saying that because it's not the most constructive step forward, is that right?
No, we are saying don't hold the Royal Commission because it won't deliver anything that hasn't already been examined and recommendations made in relation to how you do that better. Obviously, some of the learnings from the past have transmitted. If we actually have a look at the 2009 Royal Commission in Victoria, we lost 173 people. Any loss of life is a failure on our part as firefighters. However, in the context of the scale of these fires, it's nowhere near what has actually occurred. So obviously some of the lessons have been learned. What we're saying is that all the lessons that have been born through extensive inquiries, including federal inquiries, state inquiries, coronial inquests, Senate inquiries, should be collated. Those recommendations should be looked at by COAG with a view to implementation.
And is that frustrating for you guys to know that we've heard all of this before, we've had the outcomes, we have the science that backs these recommendations? Is that frustrating for you guys to know that it's politicians talking and it's a lot of red tape that's stopping it from being implemented?
We've entered into this correspondence with the Prime Minister in a constructive way, and I've tried to steer clear of politics surrounding it. What we have put through, based on our corporate experience, our knowledge in the industry of over 30 years, of having been part of many of these inquiries, we've actually suggested a way forward that would be most beneficial to ensuring the community is better protected when the next event happens. So we're not going to sit here and say, look, you're at fault, you're at fault. Here's a way forward.
Yeah.
The recommendations we're referring to, as I've already said, they have not just come from a person, they've come out of extensive hearings, cross-examination and witnesses. I would like to make this final point if I could. Royal Commissions, I sat through the Royal Commission in 2009. To be able to compel people to come and give evidence, people who've been on the front line firefighting, who've experienced horrific scenes, including members of the public, that has resulted in increased unnecessary trauma.
Yeah.
If you do not need to actually traverse that ground again because it's already been covered in a previous inquiry, you should not put those people through that.
Yeah, I think that's probably an important point to remember, that it's actually sometimes exceptionally emotional and really hard for those people that have to live through it again, and potentially, as you say, not necessary if we can just put those recommendations that we already have into play. Thanks for your time this afternoon, Peter. It was great to have a chat.
Thank you very much.